A United States military aircraft, one of the world's most powerful transport planes, lands unexpectedly in Amritsar, India. But it wasn't carrying soldiers. It wasn't delivering military aid. It wasn't even conducting a classified operation. Instead, inside this massive warplane sat 205 illegal Indian migrants, deported from the United States and quietly flown across the world on an aircraft built for war. Let that sink in. This isn't how deportations usually work. So why did the United States government use a military aircraft, not commercial flights, not immigration agencies, but a warplane, to send them back? Why is no one in the mainstream media asking questions about this? And most importantly, what else is happening behind closed doors that we aren't being told about? Today, we expose the hidden story behind this shocking operation. The facts, the lies, and the massive geopolitical consequences no one is talking about. A military plane carrying migrants? This changes everything. The C-17 Globemaster III is no ordinary aircraft. It's a combat-ready military transport jet, designed for deploying troops and tanks into war zones, conducting classified intelligence operations, carrying nuclear cargo in extreme scenarios. And yet, here it was, touching down in Amritsar, loaded not with military personnel, but with illegal migrants. Ask yourself, why? Why wasn't this handled like a normal deportation, with migrants flown back on commercial airlines? Why use a $340 million military aircraft, a plane built for war and covert missions, for something as routine as immigration enforcement? And if the United States government is suddenly using military planes for deportations, how long before this becomes the new normal? Because this wasn't just a deportation. This was a message. First theory, a secret United States-India immigration deal? This operation didn't just happen out of nowhere. Behind closed doors, Washington and New Delhi recently held high-level talks on border security, illegal migration, and national defense. And then, suddenly, a United States military aircraft is flying undocumented Indians home? Coincidence? Or something more? Think about what's really happening here. The United States is overwhelmed with record numbers of illegal migrants crossing the border. India, meanwhile, has been cracking down on human trafficking networks and underground migration pipelines. Did the United States strike a deal with India? Did Washington offer diplomatic favors, trade agreements, defense contracts, intelligence sharing in exchange for India's cooperation in quietly taking back its citizens? Because if this was part of a secret deal, what else is the United States agreeing to behind closed doors? And if nations are now using military assets to secretly move migrants, what else is being negotiated without public knowledge? Second theory. This wasn't about immigration. It was a security threat. Here's the terrifying possibility no one is talking about. What if this flight wasn't just about deporting undocumented migrants, but about removing specific individuals that posed a national security risk? Because the truth is, the U.S. border crisis has allowed thousands of criminal operatives to slip through undetected. Over 150 suspected terrorists were caught crossing into the U.S. in just the last year. Indian intelligence has long warned about organized crime syndicates using migration routes to move illegal operatives worldwide. And suddenly, the U.S. military is discreetly flying over 200 people back to India without public explanation? Were some of these individuals linked to illegal networks? Was this mission actually about removing foreign criminals before the public caught wind of it? If so, what are they hiding? Third theory. The U.S. is preparing for mass deportations, and this was the test run. If you think this was a one-time thing, think again, because this changes everything. For decades, deportations have been handled through immigration agencies, legal courts, and diplomatic channels. But now, the U.S. military is involved. Is this just the beginning of something bigger? Is this a new strategy for handling mass deportations more quickly and discreetly? Are we looking at military-run repatriation programs? Could this set a dangerous precedent, where governments start using armed forces to secretly relocate unwanted populations? Because if this becomes the new standard, it means governments can remove migrants in total secrecy, without media coverage, without legal hearings, without accountability. And if this military operation was just the first step, what comes next? India's reaction, and why this could spark a diplomatic crisis. The Indian government is now under massive pressure to answer some very uncomfortable questions. Who exactly was on board this military plane? Why did the US government handle this through military channels instead of immigration authorities? Was India complicit in a secret arrangement that the public wasn't supposed to know about? This isn't just about a flight full of migrants. This is about sovereignty, diplomacy, and international trust. If India was pressured into accepting this flight without full disclosure, could this backfire? Could this weaken India's position on the global stage? And most importantly, if this was a backroom deal between governments, does this mean other nations will start using the same strategy? Because this has set a precedent. And if governments are now secretly trading human lives like diplomatic currency, where does it end? The bigger picture, this wasn't just a flight. This was a warning. A warplane just carried 205 undocumented people across the world, and no one is giving a straight answer. The US military was directly involved, not the Department of Homeland Security, not commercial airlines, not routine immigration channels. And that should terrify you, because this proves that governments are now using military assets for immigration operations, completely outside public scrutiny. If warplanes are being used for deportations, what stops them from being used for secret detentions? Undisclosed prisoner transfers, mass removals of political dissidents, refugees, or even citizens. This flight wasn't just a deportation mission. It was a blueprint for the future. A future where governments can move people in total secrecy, without oversight, without questions, and without consequences. And if history has taught us anything, when governments start operating in the shadows, things only get worse from here. Final questions that no one is answering. Why did the US military handle this instead of civilian agencies? Was this really about illegal migration or something more secretive? Is this proof of a hidden diplomatic deal between the US and India? And most importantly, how much more is happening behind the scenes that we don't know about? This isn't just one flight. This is the beginning of something much bigger. So now, it's your turn. What do you think is really going on? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because whatever just happened, it was just the beginning.